Hey. Thanks, Pastor Andy, and good evening, everybody. To be honest, we really didn't know how many of you will come in to join us because it's been like forever since the last time we had this. With Chinese New Year just passed, people could still be in the Chinese New Year lethargic mood of having your stomach full and forgetting all the other dates that are before us. But for me, I'm so glad that some of you have made it. But I'm even more glad that my two friends, Pastor Palan and Pastor Sam, are with us. Really, we can just go ahead and talk for 1 hour without anybody listening because we just enjoy each other's company so much. But we're glad. We're glad that there are precious people already on. And as Pastor Andy said, we welcome all of you. And thank you that in spite of and despite of all that has happened in the last few weeks, we are still here tonight. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of Pastor Sam and Pastor Palan when I say we're very privileged as pastors to even think that you would think that it's worth your time to listen to what we have to say. So let me just welcome very quickly Pastor Sam and Pastor Palan. If you'd like to just say hi for a couple of seconds.
Okay, hello everybody. I hope you had a fantastic family connection during the Chinese New Year. Whether you do celebrate or not, it's a good time to rest, catch up, and so good to be back and happy to see all of you.
Thank you.
And from me, Blessed New Year. Both, I know it's 2 months late, but the Chinese New Year, Chap Kwame, just over. So, Blessed Chinese New Year as well to everyone. God bless you guys.
Amen. So as I said, we're ready to chat away in this next 1 hour that we have together. And you know how fast 1 hour goes, guys. It's like sometimes, we are presented with 7 questions, 10 questions, and we can't even finish that sometimes because, there's so much to say even on one issue. But this evening, I'm going to lay aside the questions of last year. Also, Andy tells me that there were no new questions that came. And I sort of expected that also because of what we just said, right? It's just the beginning of the year and there's Chinese New Year, etc. So tonight, I was hoping to have a chat with my friends, Pastor Sam and Pastor Palan, on this whole issue of the pandemic and the church. And what is done to the church, what COVID-19, what challenges have COVID-19 brought to the church. And so with Pastor Sam having a very thriving and growing church with many people and also a church plant in different places. I think recently he said he went to Kuching to dedicate their venue there. And with Pastor Palan, being one who's itinerant, traveling around Malaysia especially, I think we're going to get some really good insights into what the churches, not just one church, not just two churches, but the churches in general are going through. Of course, we won't be able to speak on behalf of every church. We don't know every church in Malaysia, but we do know ours, and we do know the churches of our friends. So I'll just go ahead and start with this phrase, Pastor Sam. Let me start with you, and of course, Pastor Palan, please go ahead and follow suit after that. There's a phrase called pandemic casualty. Pandemic casualty. And sometimes when pastors are talking, let's say you hear about something happened, okay? Maybe a ministry closed down, or a leader stepped down, or a church member left church, either left church completely or left to join another church. And then, another pastor would say, oh, is he or is she, or is that because of a pandemic casualty? What do you think goes into a mind of a pastor when that phrase is used? Pandemic casualty. What do you think it entails? What do you think it really means? What do you think is in the pastor's mind when that phrase is used, Pastor Sam?
Okay. Well, I think in the mind of the pastor, when he hears that phrase, I think he feels or losses. He feels a certain amount, a sense of loss, loss of friendship, loss of the good old days, the loss of spiritual passion, loss of ministry vitality. I think those are the things that pretty much goes through a pastor's mind. I think also loss for answers. There
Right.
are many pastors who feel like they don't have an answer,
Right.
really an answer when they uh, experience or hear the phrase.
It's a very new phrase, right, Pastor Sam? We've
Yes.
not heard it ever before. And so that's why, because maybe we don't even have a better word for it, except that we know that the pandemic is a major cause of it. We probably can't blame the pandemic completely because we also know that the pandemic probably didn't cause it, it probably revealed it. Maybe it was already there, the problem. Maybe it was already there, the issue, the lack. So maybe the pandemic actually more was the fire that revealed what was lacking, and maybe not. Maybe also it also means that the pandemic hit us so hard that it has caused ripple effects. It's caused a tsunami in that sense, like an earthquake that's caused a tsunami that the church wasn't ready to face because we never knew that could happen. So you're talking about loss, right, Pastor Sam, and it's a loss that's been brought about by something that we have never experienced in our lifetime, or rather, I should say, before the last 2 years, and some of us have lived for a couple of decades now on Earth, so you're talking about loss, and you're talking about loss that it was caused by the pandemic, and therefore we come up with this phrase, pandemic casualty. Anything else to add to that, Pastor Sam?
I'm good with that. Thank you.
Okay, I'll jump to Pastor Palan now. Pastor Palan, pandemic casualty.
Yeah, for me, I think for the last 2 months, I've been moving around with native pastors in smaller towns. So I'm glad that Pastor Sam touched some of the things that is more related to the city folks.
Right.
But I will be very practical when it comes to this. The pandemic casualty for some of these rural pastors is loss of income.
Sure.
And that's because many of their congregation are day-to-day wage earners.
That's right.
And a lot of them are unable to not only fend for themselves and their family, but it's almost impossible to tithe and give. And so the churches in these rural towns are struggling because the loss of income also inhibits their ability to do good works for those who are in need. When actually they turn to the church, there's so much opportunities for them to reach out and minister, but they can only do that much because they themselves are struggling and they have
Yes.
lost so much. Yeah, so that's a very practical thing that is happening for the last 1.5 years.
Right. The theme from both of you seems to be loss. And I also go back to Pastor Sam. He said towards the end that he feels like It's not just loss in physical terms, practical terms, but pastors are actually at a loss, and they don't really know what hit them, and they don't know what to do. Because sometimes some of the things that are coming our way can be as practical as loss of income and therefore loss of tithes, loss of in offering. I hear of pastors, telling me that now I have to be offering collector, not just preparing message. I have to drive from house to house to collect offerings, or from especially from older people who don't use the digital format, and they're saving their cash into envelopes and waiting for the pastor to come round. And the pastors, feel they need to do that. Otherwise, they can't pay the bills, the rental of the church, etc. So these are very, very practical issues. But there are also other things where people have felt disconnected in church, felt like there's no fellowship, so they feel a bit lost. And there are many things that have come about, and I will go into some of these things in detail tonight. But you sometimes feel like I couldn't do anything much about it, because even if I went online, some of you guys couldn't take online for long, right? It was hard to be on screen so long, etc. So a lot of it was caused by the pandemic. It was no one's fault really, and pastors being faced with this for the first time had to scramble, some even had to learn what Zoom is, had to learn, maybe some older pastors first time going to YouTube, etc., etc. So really, while we are trying to say and see where we can blame or highlight the lack in our churches, yet to be fair, all of us, including the pastors, had to go through this for the first time. And so a casualty, I think, in my mind, is something that seemed unavoidable because of the accident. So when you say a casualty in the form of accident, it happened, and there were lost lives, and there were injuries, and everybody needed to go to the hospital, and it was emergency, and the ambulance came, and this and that, and the driver himself, who could be the pastor, was also injured on the way, and it was no fault of his, because he didn't beat a red light, he didn't drive faster than 110 the speed limit. It was a pandemic that came our way, and all of us got hurt, including the leaders, isn't it, pastors, including the pastors. So I think when we talk about pandemic casualty, is something that happened. I mean, it happened. The accident happened, and all of us were in the same boat. So if we could have had an answer for it earlier or before the pandemic, then maybe you can say, it wasn't a casualty because you guys knew it already before that, and you should have known what to do. But I think, to be fair, every one of us was scrambling for answers and trying to do things that we were not familiar with. Would that be fair to say, Pastor Sam?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I would totally agree with that. Yeah, the the casualty impact is so great that we have been dwelling or talking about this for the last 2 years. Even in many of our pastors, what we call webinars or meetings, get-together, we have been talking about this for the last 2 years. In
Right.
fact, next next week, we are having something called the post pandemic effect seminar among the Bahasa churches with NECF.
Okay.
So I think I agree with you that it is something that is so overwhelming, that has caught us all unprepared.
Yeah.
But yet, I think it's good. One thing is good is that because we have been talking, we have been processing. Because we've been talking, we have been processing it. In that way, it is good. But
Yeah.
needless to say that it has definitely created an impact so deep that we have never stopped talking for the last 2 years.
Right. Yeah. Pastor Palan?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Pastor Kenneth. And I think one thing that I want to add is nobody expected it. You
Yeah.
know, even though Jesus has said it so clearly in the Word of God, in Matthew chapter 24,
Yeah.
such things are going to happen.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I personally learned is to take the things of Christ seriously and start preparing and being ready.
Right. Is there anything, maybe just one thought that you think, Pastor Palan, that we, the church, could have done better? I mean, there's probably 100 thoughts. But one thought, maybe just because of time, that we could have done better. I say this because sometimes when people leave church, they want to go to a better one, right? Because of the pandemic casualty, and they don't realize that everybody was hurt actually in this accident, and so they feel what they feel, and then they say, okay, I'm going to leave for a better church. What makes another church better? I'm not sure, but maybe they handled the pandemic or the accident better. Maybe they called the ambulance faster. Maybe maybe they went to a better hospital. Maybe their care was better. I don't know. So thinking about that from that angle, what could churches actually do better, even if they didn't expect, or they didn't expect the magnitude of that accident to be like that, in an emergency case, and in what we have already gone through these past 2 years, Pastor Palan, what do you think is the one thing? Because another thing will hit us again, maybe in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, 5 years' time. Uh, what do you think our response can be in a more improved way?
If you ask me, there are so many thoughts, but since you said one, I would think about how the early church started. There was a lot of issues, and it was dangerous to be a Christian at that time. It was
Right.
dangerous together, and so the model that they formed was the house church. Although they were so used to meeting in the temple as
Yeah.
Jews, but the the early church movement were meeting at homes, and leaders were empowered to pastor and care for their small groups.
Right.
And a lot of discipleship, maturity was happening. And it was manageable, it was, and they were able to hit the target, devoted to the word, devoted to fellowship, devoted to breaking of bread, devoted to prayer. There was very little distraction in those small groups that was so focused. And so it was something that we could have done better, which we learn about small groups. But I think when I learned about small group, all I thought about was multiplying, growing, making more people come to church. That was my focus, to be honest. Uh, but if I look back now, my focus would be maturing the believers so that they can survive
Right.
even when they are not able to gather.
That's really good. I think small group is the way to go. But I like how you said that it's also sometimes the focus of the small group, because this connection was definitely one of the words being used among people who were feeling disenfranchised and feeling like, hey, is church really happening? And maybe I should leave to another church that's more connected. And probably they are also not sure when they leave to a new church whether you will be as connected as they hoped it would be, because as we said again, every church went through this accident. There's not one church that was spared. So people are just trying, they're trying to see whether another place would have handled the pandemic better. So your focus is small groups, strengthen the small groups, but strengthen in the area of discipleship, maturity, getting our people to be able to stand in times of testing, And maybe also I would add, that when the small groups can be tight and also care for their own in times like this, because when we are so disconnected, even you can't get out of your house, you can't get out of 10 kilometers radius, you can't do this, you can't do that, all the SOPs are out, and really small, and not just small, maybe small and nearby each other, whereby hopefully, ideally, one day, you don't have to walk very far to get to the cell group or the small group. These days, we still have to drive our car because our small groups are still quite spread out. And then when the SOP hits, you can't even travel to, even though you're a small group or a cell group, you can't even travel to that. So maybe the days to come, we have a saying here in Acts, a church in every school and on every street. That's a very, very big dream, but can you imagine a church in every school and on every street, meaning that every street in my neighborhood, there's a cell group. And one day maybe it'll come a time when we can just walk to our cell group. And maybe when the pandemic comes again, and it will just be worse and worse, that hopefully we would have come to a place whereby we have grown tighter, closer, and that we can actually meet up. And of course now people say that, you can meet up online, no? Again, some people tell you, online also they get online fatigue. So I hear you, Pastor Palan. I think it's great. A small group is the way to go, but also what do we focus on small group? Because sometimes if we are focusing just on one thing and not the other, the pandemic will prove that we may have not completely done it the way we should have. So Pastor Palan, I hear you. Thank you so much. Pastor Sam, any thoughts about that one thing of how we can respond better?
Okay, I totally agree with Pastor Palan on the phrase that he used to describe the role of a church in helping the members, which the word that Pastor Palan said was, we should equip and prepare the members to better so that they can be mature. I agree with that, but also I also find that I find members, particularly in the area of moving to different church,
Right.
they're migrating to different church. I find that they are doing it not because we failed in any way. Because if we were to look back at our responses during the pandemic, right? Like for example, we send out a video every, like a encouragement every other day. We come up with new methodologies of reaching them. We invested money in, in setting up our app, our own church app. Upgraded our website, came up with new teaching.
Wow.
We also had, a job opportunity for members who have lost businesses. We set up a counseling unit for members who need advices on recovery. We did a lot of seminars on how to overcome depression, blah, blah, blah. We set up a fund that came up to more than, a lot of money in giving away to help members who cannot buy rice, cannot buy food, raise the white flag. We did so many things. Then we still hear members say, we are leaving because we didn't get enough care. So how?
Right.
My Lord, what else are we supposed to do? We did all we know. We never learned in the Bible school how to lead in a pandemic. Come on.
Yeah.
Nobody have written a curriculum for a Bible school on how to lead in a pandemic, how to redesign and restructure and reconfigure your leadership skill. Come on, nobody have even written a book So in fact, I think now many of us, I believe many pastors, we can probably come up with some kind of manual on how to lead in a pandemic. And we've done all we can, and we still hear people say, "Oh, we didn't get
Not enough.
enough. We didn't get care." So I think lah, if I focus on that part alone, people are going to leave, no matter what you do lah. They already made up their mind they want to leave. They just probably the pandemic is just an opportunity to leave. I mean, I have no problem. I bless them. I love them. If I see them anywhere, I will still drink coffee with them if they want to lah. You know, but I tell you, I mean, this is my feeling lah. I listed down the things that we have done. I mean, we have, I mean, come out with series after series and webinars.
Wow.
People want to leave, they will leave. So I think we have done our best to the best. Maybe our best is not good enough, Lo. That's the conclusion I can make, Pastor.
Pastor Sam, I
Yes,
first,
sir.
number one, thank you so much for sharing that. That is refreshing, even though it could be depressing.
It is.
And secondly, I'm definitely waiting for that book to come out from you, because I think you can write it. Number three, I was going to say, before you said if they're going to leave, they're going to leave. Before you said that, I was going to say, when I grow up, I want to be like you.
Yes.
I think every church that listen to you, I want to be that church lah. We want to be APCC, because man, I tell you, if anyone's going to do it, I think Pastor Pala will agree also as you lah. Pastor Sam, you're very detailed in that way, very caring. You are a teacher at heart, so you break it all down and you do all that you can to prepare the people. I can see you doing it, really. If there's any pastor that will do it, it's you lah. And yet you say that it was not good enough. And so I think maybe conclusion is we can only do our best, right?
Yes, yeah lah.
Do our best, learn from each other, and disciple, mature people, small groups, and be there for them, show them we care. And I mean, what else can you do if you after your best? What else can you do, right?
Yeah.
And just if they left Jesus, they can leave you lah, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then of course we bless them lah. We bless them and hope that they will find a church that is less damaged in the accident lah, I guess.
Yeah.
And hopefully if they find that, great. And if they find out later that actually all of us are in the same boat, then if they come back also we receive them, amen.
Amen.
And it's so good just to be able to hear both of you sharing that, because as we said it won't be the last pandemic in that sense it might be called another name, but as Pastor Palas rightly said, Jesus already said it's going to happen, and it's going to get from bad to worse, and the church, but the church will continue to remain strong I mean, it's gone through all kinds of pandemic all these centuries, and it still remain as a standing beacon of light. And churches always thrive in persecution, right? And problems and pressure. So I think that's the encouragement.
Amen.
Just to add to that, Pastor Kenneth,
Please, Pastor Palan.
I was just doing some studies on Paul's letter to Corinth.
Right.
When he was in Corinth, establishing the church, and 5 years later he was writing the letter to the Corinthians. And I think it's in chapter 3, I may be wrong, where he says, by this time you ought to be mature. So it's about 5 to 6 years. And he's saying by this time you ought to be mature.
Right.
And I think what God is allowing to happen is actually, the maturity process. If you realize, people in difficult parts of the world tend to be able to handle situations a lot better than people from places where life is more comfortable. And the difficulties are the ones that will cause the faith to grow.
Yes.
And it's like gold going through fire, being refined. Faith is being strengthened, and obviously, I believe the church is going to become strong, lah. And like what Pastor Sam said, not everyone who calls him Lord, Lord, will make it. And so I think as pastors, we just have to understand that, and that the ones that are left faithful, standing faithful, are the ones that we have been fishing for, lah. Working hard for, lah. And so that can be a great encouragement to the leaders, lah. Not to focus on those who left, but focus on those who remain.
Right. That's encouraging. Amen. Okay, pastors, I'm going to go through now a list of maybe 8 to 9 things, depending on the time we have. We got about half an hour at the most. And I'm just going to have you either respond yes, no, or if you want to add on to the thought, please do. But this 8 or 9 things that I'm about to share with us came from a time I had with the Love Subang pastors. So we have a Love Subang Pastors Fellowship here once a month. And there is also Pastors Fellowship all across the nation. And I know there's a strong one in Penang. But we, as we were fellowshipping and having a nice nasi lemak and curry puff and coffee and Milo, the effects of the pandemic came about as a question was being asked. Have you started physical services yet? And we went around. Okay, so here are the 9 things, and I will pause at each one and to wait for your response. And again, the response can be short or it can be longer than that. Okay, here we go. Number 1, people are slowly but steadily filling up the seats in church. Is that your experience, Pastor Palan, Pastor Sam? People are slowly but steadily filling up the seats in church. So let's begin with a positive. Have you seen people coming back?
Yes.
Is it slow? Is it steady? Is it fast?
For me, depend on the congregation, the language group.
Okay. This is your fastest group, Pastor Palan.
The same, Pastor Kenneth. It is. I'm seeing the Bahasa group as the fastest to come back to fill the chairs.
And that's also your experience, right, Pastor Sam?
Bahasa, Tamil, Mandarin, Hokkien. The slowest. They all are fast. Very. Not just trickling in, but really fast. Almost coming to 90%.
And your deduction of that compared to the English service is because why do you think that's happening?
Very good question. I don't know. I really don't know. We just had this conversation.
Yeah, I very quickly say this. I would like to go back to what Pastor Palan said, that in most countries that are persecuted and have hard times, people tend to grow deeper with God, mature faster, and take things a little bit more realistic and maybe even not so fearful. I remember one time when I was asking the Lord, why is the Mandarin service growing so fast in Malaysia? Why is the Bahasa service growing so fast? Why is the Hokkien service, Teochew service, and why is the English ones growing so slow? And we are probably growing more on transfer than anything else. And I felt the Lord saying, because the English church has got so much. You got the best teachers around the world, best books written, and yet they do so little. They are a spoiled group, This was what the Lord told me years ago. And those who have very little are the ones who actually eventually have much more. Because God just comes through for them because they look to Him. And the ones who have got a lot of books to read, a lot of speakers to count on, the whole English world and the English Christianity, we seem to look to these things and depend on these things and wait for the next prophet to say something. But when you don't have, then you really have to just depend on God. And I find that there's some fearlessness about the Bahasa Church, that apa itu COVID, can't spell. And I mean they're not stupid lah, and they're not what's the word? They're not careless. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. They're not. They actually also know they got friends who have been sick, they've got friends who have died. And yet there's a difference in their spirit compared to the English that I sense is more spoiled, is more fearful, is more like it looks like there's more to lose. I don't know, maybe because they're richer, so they think there's more to lose, and the poorer is like, okay, nothing to lose, let's just go for it. I don't know. But let me just try to tap on your brains a little bit, Pastor Sam, Pastor Palan.
Okay. I am having a guest speaker in my church this weekend, and Pastor, we spoke exactly the same question you're asking now. And I just say I really don't know why, but some of the answers you gave, some of the possible scenario that you painted could probably give a good revelation to the phenomena that we are facing in the English congregation. One thing I said was this: it's not because the English congregation members are so well educated, they have read into the COVID impact and casualties so much that they are very careful. No, I mean, equally in all the other language groups, there are also very well informed, well read people. Yeah.
Yes.
How come they are not afraid to come to church? The only thing I can think of that I can contribute is, the other language groups are like Bahasa, Tamil, Mandarin. I think they are a bit relational. They cannot bear having church life by watching a TV, and working through a phone screen. They are very relational. They love relationship, and they are very deeply bonded people in relationships. So they want to come. They want to see friends.
Right.
I think English people, whenever we speak English, right, and that is not our mother tongue. I think there's certain thing because language is a culture.
Yes.
We cannot deny that. Language is a culture. So it does, in a way, affect the culture of our spirituality, the culture of the things that we believe and we prescribe to in life. So I think that's the closest I can get. But it's still a very puzzling thing. But I think you brought a good point, Pastor Kenneth.
So your point is also very good, Pastor Sam, and I like the fact you call us English people.
Sorry.
Suddenly we're English people, but no, I get what you're saying. We are English speaking people, and the thing is, Pastor Sam, very very good point, and the thought about language is culture and language is community, and actually if you think about it, I mean it's sad to say this, but the English speaking people in Malaysia don't have a culture in the sense you look at it, there's no community, right? And so we are proficient at the language because it's a proficiency lah. Whereas the Bahasa speaking and the Mandarin speaking, it is a family, it is a community, and when you have that, you cannot tahan. I use that word. You can't stand. You can't take it too long without that physical touch. Because that's what a community is, right? It's common unity. So you put the two words together, common unity, you get community. And so the only thing common about the English language is that we speak English, but it's not a culture really, right? So therefore, we can actually do things online. We can do things far away from each other because it's just a language, or rather, an understanding of a language. But I think your point is very good. I never thought of it that way. That it is communities that actually want to come back together. So maybe actually the English speaking don't really have a natural community. They may have to work hard at forming one, but we don't have one. Very good point, Pastor Palan. Do you have a contribution to that thought? Because you also said the Bahasa speaking is coming back in droves and fast. So, what's your thought?
I think Pastor Sam has said enough. I don't want to discourage further.
Okay. Pastor Pala is feeling the discouragement now coming through. But yeah, I think it's a good point, and we want to continue to speak English and yet not be English. And maybe the one thing that can draw us together is we are Malaysian. We're Malaysian.
Amen.
And amen. Okay, number 2, many more new faces joining. Do you experience that?
Yes.
Wow. So
Yes, many more new faces joining.
fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Because the third point is, but former regulars, not just regulars, former regulars, notably leaders. Oh, I think what former regulars mean, formerly before the pandemic, they were regulars. But because of the pandemic, they're no longer regulars. And so former regulars and notably leaders are not coming back as quickly as expected. Even leaders. And they will have different reasons and maybe even excuses. Is that something that you are experiencing also? Besides the second point, which we all say yes, many more new faces are joining, but former regulars, notably leaders, are not coming back as quickly as expected. How is that, Pastor Palan, for you?
Yes, very true, because our former leaders are all 60 and above. So they are.
Okay. So sort of good reason lah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Pastor Sam?
For me, yes.
Okay.
Also,
All right.
yes.
Okay, let's just jump to point number 4. We, again, we don't know why. We may have our guesses, and it's not, it's not the most encouraging thing, but it's true lah. Number 4, significant drop in volunteers, forcing some ministries to either stall, not be able to start again so quickly, or some ministries even have to be stopped because of significant drop in volunteers and people serving those ministries. Yes, no?
Yes, for me.
Yes, a big yes, especially ushers. Nobody wants to.
Ushers.
Yeah.
Wow. We have even in our worship team also a lot of people saying, no, I'm not ready to serve yet. I think our sound team, has dropped from, a certain number to like half its number. And we want to start back our, Pastor Palan, I know you love our Espresso, which is our hospitality ministry, but that hasn't really kicked off yet. And even when we've tried to find whether, people are ready to help with the hospitality, they're not quite ready. So I would also say yes for X Church. And musicians, some may not want to travel to our church plants. So there's a significant drop. And even for X-Kids, our children ministry. I think almost in every ministry, or we call it Dream Team here in X, we have discovered that. Let's move on to number 5. More people refusing to serve more than one service. If they used to say, yeah, Pastor Palan, Pastor Sam, I'm on for 2 services. Now, it seems like from the Love Subang Pastors Fellowship, more people are refusing to serve more than one service, or even once a month. They're like, okay, please, I only want to be on once a month. Don't put me more than once a month. I don't want to come out so often. Is that something that you are experiencing, Pastor Sam?
No, for me.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Or Pastor Palan?
Our church, no.
Okay. All right. So wonderful. That's great because from the pastors that I talked to, they say please don't put me on for 2 services. Please don't put me on every week. So we're hearing a bit more of that now. So good that both of you are not experiencing as much of that or not at all. Let's just jump to number 6. More people coming to church only when they are scheduled to serve.
Yes.
Okay. Only when they're scheduled to serve. Otherwise, if I'm not on, I will miss that Sunday. I will go maybe online. I'm talking especially about churches who are still hybrid or online, mainly. And they say I would rather do this from a safer place. So please, only when I'm on, I come. So, Pastor Palan?
I think because we have 2 sites, one of the sites we don't have this problem, but the other site we have this problem.
Okay. So there is I think we can be on the same page on this. People used to come all the time, whether they're on or not. Now it's mainly only when I'm scheduled. Okay. Point number 7. There's this just enough, and I put it in close and open quote, just enough mentality towards serving. Cukup, yeah, just enough. And please, pastors, don't go and preach those go the extra mile messages. It will make us feel very, very, discouraged. Because there's one pastor in Love Subang who said, I'm trying to, because I've got all these different issues, people refusing to serve more than one service, coming to church only when they're on. So I think as a pastor, I should preach lah. Come on, guys, the Bible says go the extra mile. And so one pastor actually said, his member said to him, Pastor, please don't make us feel so bad. Don't preach those kind of messages now. Preach it later please don't preach the extra mile messages. Or if you do that, we'll just tune out. We'll tune out your messages and we'll tune into another service from another church that we feel is more caring because if you're caring, you won't do more for the Lord at a time when we want to do less. So everybody is just enough mode. It's like a mode, like if you have a dial on your dashboard, there's a mode that says just enough, a mode that says go the extra mile. Is this something that you are experiencing? Pastor Palan? Pastor Sam, go ahead, Pastor Sam.
Okay, yeah. For me, not for the for the language congregations.
Okay.
More so for English.
Okay. All right. The just enough mentality, right?
Yeah.
And I think to be fair, also when I'm speaking to most of these pastors, they actually only have English congregations, or should I say English-speaking congregations? And I was speaking to another pastor from the Love Subang Pastors Fellowship, and he is actually having an Indonesian church, and also seem to have quite a bit of these things that we are talking about tonight. They don't seem to go through, except that for him, the volunteers dropped dramatically because a lot of these Indonesians came from Indonesia, of course, and then they had to go back during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So they had to close their youth service, close their campus service, close a lot of different services. So that was another story altogether. But if they're back, they seem to say, just count me in. You want me to serve 1, 2, 3, 5 services? I'm there, So again, I think it's very different when it comes to community people. Pastor Palan, same question on this just enough mentality.
I have not heard anyone say that, Pastor. But
Okay.
because I don't know how to preach anything other than if you want to follow me, pick up your cross.
Right. Okay. So that's good. I like the responses. Yes, no, maybe, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Different congregations, different responses. Okay, now I think we've got time for two more, which is we'll finish off my 9 points here that I actually took as a point of minutes, for myself when I was hearing the pastors share, and I of course shared also my experience. Number 8, people want shorter services. Shorter worship, shorter word. This is from the pastors, from Love Subang. Pastor, please shorter worship, shorter word. And yet, one other pastor said they don't mind longer everything else that they like to do. Longer Netflix, longer video games, longer shopping. No problem going to a shopping center that has a lot of people. But definitely, I'm scared to go to church. So these are from the pastors from Le Subang. I wonder whether Pastor Palan, Pastor Sam, you are seeing that happen also in the churches that you know. People want shorter services, but don't mind to have anything else that they like to do longer.
Definitely
Pastor Palan first,
definitely on our side, because our services used to be 2 hours.
Yeah.
Then when it went online, it was 1 hour and 5 minutes, something like that.
Right.
And now they started physical again, and then it's about 1 hour 45 minutes. And so people are struggling.
Right, because they were so used to 1 hour 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I was asked by a few of my leaders to pivot. I think the word was pivot. Why don't you pivot, make it shorter? And I sort of refused to, because I could see us coming back to a physical service. I just felt like when they come back, they're going to be so used to the shorter pivot and everything that pivoted for the sake of that time of pandemic. But what we didn't realize was whatever that we did for the pandemic will continue. I think some leaders were really upset with me. But as leaders, we don't just see the today, we see the tomorrow.
Yes.
And we are very careful to what we decide to do today, because we will build a culture, a habit for a tomorrow that none of us actually want to embrace. And after a while, it's very easy to spoil a kid. I realize, seeing a lot of parents doing it, it's very, very easy to spoil a child. And once the child have tasted it, like how I saw one old Malay gentleman, when he was asked about UMNO, he said, mereka kalau sudah makan, kalau anak harimau sudah makan daging, dia tak mau minum susu lagi. So this was on national TV, so I can repeat it here. If the taste of blood, don't want to go back to milk. So whatever they taste, whatever you allow them to taste, thinking that is all right, will after a while become the norm. So I know that many churches pivoted. This is sort of like a new word they were using during the pandemic, which I didn't really like. But I was quite adamant that we're going to be the same, even online, because I just can't imagine us coming back to this when people get used to, like another pastor said, I think I shared here before, my guys in my church are so used to wearing their sarong when they're watching on screen that they now don't want to come back to church because they have to wear properly and they are too comfortable with their sarong, that kind of thing. Pastor Sam, I want to jump to you right now about people wanting shorter services and yet their own likes seem to be all right. They don't mind 2 hours shopping, but they want shorter service. So what's your, first of all, yes, no, do you experience that?
Yes and no. Let me explain. My bahasa, anyway, first and foremost, we all pivoted because we wanted to accommodate to the online community and keep everything short and sweet, But I think, Pastor Kenneth, you brought a very good point, which I think I wish we didn't spoil the kid, by pivoting for the sake of pivoting, and then after that, realizing, alamak, what have we created, But my Bahasa group told me, Pastor, why the sermon all very short? These are on. they're saying, why is the sermon very short? Pastor, lama sikit, tak apalah Pastor. Because
bagus.
they want long, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
like we said, community loves longer time, longer hangout, longer connection. Whereas for the English, those that are still watching from online,
Yeah.
they continually propose that the service should, because they said we are watching online, but the service people are there on site. You know, we should still keep it short.
Right.
That keep it short mindset still prevails
Right.
among our bahasa Inggeris lah.
Yeah. Got
Okay.
you. I got you. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's good insight. I think a Netflix movie is also on screen, but it's also 2 hours. So I think sometimes. Of course, they will say but church not so entertaining If the Netflix 2 hours one is entertaining, so I watch it from start to end, including the advertisement. But I don't know. I think we will never be able to beat Netflix when it comes to entertainment because we were not called to entertain. We were not called to entertain. We were called to empower. Okay, so last point, and that's all we have. Number 9. The pastors were telling me the word disconnect is a new word that seems to be a grouse and a complaint. People just feel disconnected. Just I don't feel connected to this church anymore. Therefore, I'm going to find another church to feel connected to. It's a new word, and it also seems to be an acceptable excuse. Sometimes the excuse is an excuse, but then you can also be an acceptable excuse, meaning that everybody seems to think that is the right thing to say, is the right excuse to give, and as long as you give the excuse, everybody's going to understand. And of course, I keep saying that, hey, the whole church was disconnected, you know what you mean, and we have a phrase here in Acts that says, in the world that is most connected, there's never been a generation more connected, and I'm talking about all our social media and all our Wi-Fi and all that, right? In a generation where we are most connected, we are also most disconnected. And I look back at Paul, who wrote one letter and got one letter to be read by every church that he was that was in the region, and I think the next letter will come in 5 years time, even as Pastor Palan noted. And then you only got like 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians. You don't have 3 Corinthians, 4 Corinthians. There's no letter, So people, I think, in Paul's time was probably more disconnected in a way. With Paul, you don't get to see your senior pastor every year, maybe once every 3 years, 5 years, and then he's gone again around the world to preach. So in terms of disconnection, I think the early church had it worse. And yet they were so connected, and I boil it down to that they were connected by vision. They were connected by the Great Commission. They were connected by the words that Jesus gave to them, and so they didn't look for connection to obey the things of the Lord. They were connected around the world because they were taught the same things and given the words of Christ. And the connection was so strong in the early church that they took the world by storm. And yet today we seem to feel disconnected because of it's probably another pandemic casualty. It's probably another pandemic casualty. The disconnection was so normal. It was natural. Everyone was disconnected. And as the SOP, no thanks to the SOP, also caused disconnection. But anyway, as we close, Pastor Sam, Pastor Palan, any thoughts on that? Has your church, anyone felt like that? And then we'll draw to a close. Pastor Palan, maybe?
Okay. For us, definitely, there were people who have felt that way and left. But Pastor Kenneth, just to add, I think many of these people, disconnect is not a new word for them. It's just a new term that they're using. Because many of them, the disconnection doesn't happen suddenly. It's not a pandemic thing. They were never connected in the first place. And so this is just many of them who left. This was just a perfect timing or perfect excuse lah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Pastor Palan. Pastor Sam?
Yeah, I think I've heard the similar terminology in the course of this pandemic. You know, as a pastor, right? Sometimes my heart goes out to them because they, I don't know, like what Pastor Palan said, maybe from the beginning they were not,
Mm.
you know, and so maybe they need to learn to be connected, rooted, understand, you know, certain biblical values like Pastor Kenneth, what you shared about they are connected by a vision. I think that thing must be rooted. So in a way, I don't feel like upset, angry with them. I just feel sorry for them. You
Yeah.
know, I close with this statement because someone said this lah. We see a lot of weaknesses in marriage, but actually, nothing wrong with marriage. All marriage does is reveal our weaknesses.
Mm.
You know, just because you see people breaking up and divorces happening, actually, there's nothing wrong with marriage. Marriage is God created, you know, institution for us.
Yeah.
But what marriage does is only reveal our weaknesses. So I think what the pandemic has done is actually it has actually revealed our true weaknesses, who we really, you know. I mean, I think that's what has happened.
Yeah.
It's actually a test of fire, you know,
Yeah.
and proven our true worth. So I think
Mm.
that's what's happening, and I agree with you. Those statements, like, you know, we are no more connected with you. You know, we don't feel anymore. Oh, yo, I also heard it lah. Very sad lah, but it's
Yeah.
true.
It is.
Yeah.
It is very sad because some of these people have been actually, we felt that there was at least one time in our journey that we were close, you know, that they've been maybe even around for some time. And we thought we had something, you know, but as you said, the pandemic is more revealing than it is anything else. And maybe also it's refining. And
Yeah.
so, to both of you again, Pastor Sam, Pastor Palan, I want to thank you for being on and being honest as usual, and so that we can actually be of some help to the listeners, some encouragement. Of course, you know, sometimes when we become honest, there also is a tinge of discouragement because it depends on who is listening. But we want to end with encouragement, and I think that's what we always try to do. And I would say that we as pastors also are learning. And I am trying my best to meet up with as many people as possible. Of course, when your church is bigger, there are more people to meet up. Church is smaller, you know, I think all of us got different challenges. It's best not to compare, and still be able to say that even pastors are learning, and I, of course, am trying to learn to connect more. Every single day I try to meet up with someone I've not had a chance to meet up. I don't know whether I want to do any of these things just to stop people from leaving. I think both of you pastors were very spot on, that we're not just going to do things so that people don't leave. I think that shouldn't be the inspiration or the drive behind what we do. We just want to do it because it's the right thing to do, and we want to do it because it's the best that we can do. And I think just to end by saying that, yes, let's all learn from this pandemic. Let's all do better so that we can face other pandemics that will come our way. But we can also, at the end of the day, only do our best, isn't it, pastors? We can only do our best with what we have, with what we know. And when we know that changes need to be made, we make it. But still, it doesn't stop people feeling the way they feel and making decisions that are still, at the end of the day, slightly disappointing. But we learn to love them anyway, and we all hopefully will just grow and become better people, better pastors, even better members And I think that's important, that everybody is learning, and as we learn, we continue to better ourselves and give our best. But that's really all we can do at the end of the day, and we are answerable to God. And as long as our hands are clean and our hearts are pure, I think that's all we can ask of each other, and to cut each other some slack also lah, right? Because none are perfect and all of us are going through the same thing, and to do unto others what you want others to do unto you is a good principle to live by. So thank you again, Pastor Palan, Pastor Sam. Maybe I give each of you just 30 seconds to a minute to just round up your thoughts. Pastor Palan?
I am very thankful, Pastor Kenneth, that I'm able to go through such a season as this, because none of our forefathers had to go through this.
Yeah.
The pandemic is actually a very unique situation where none of our experiences can help us lead the church. And so I believe it is making leaders more and more dependable on God. No more dependent on God, and constantly looking to God for the next step, just as David had to inquire of the Lord before going into every battle. I believe God is raising leaders who will inquire of God before leading the church into the next step, the next season, next week, or whatever they need to do. They have to go back to God. It's not from a book, it's not from another pastor's experience, but it's got to be looking at the author and the finisher of our race, Jesus Christ.
Amen. Keep our focus, yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
Pastor Sam.
Okay. I my heart really goes out. I know, I'm not sure who's listening to this recording, who are the audience, who are leaders, who are really having the similar struggle. But I just want to encourage all the listeners. I'm always inspired by Solomon when he was young king who became, who took over from David. And in First Kings chapter 3, when he had an encounter with the Lord in a dream, and the Lord asked him, Solomon, what do you want? And I like Solomon's answer. He said, this is how Solomon viewed the people whom he was leading. He said this, Lord, who can lead these great people of yours? So I always remind myself that the perception I have about the people I'm leading is very important,
Right.
because that's the kind of approach that I will have before God each time I see them failing, or each time I see them, behaving that is not acceptable to me, at least. Well, Solomon looked at the people that he was leading and said, Lord, who can lead? He said, Lord, I'm young, and who can lead such great people of yours? So give me, wisdom for administration. So I think this is my prayer for myself, which is, Lord, help me to see your people as great, because you really love your people. God really loves his people. And I find sometimes that I cannot come to the place where I can want to love the people, not like the way God loves, because I cannot, but at least in my capacity, in my function as a pastor, to love the people, because that's the calling I have from him. It's a tough job, Pastor. I tell you, it's tough, but help us, God help us to view them as great. Yeah,
That's
that's my
right.
life.
That's so good. That's so good. I think we constantly have to remind ourselves. I also use that word a lot of times when I'm speaking to my leaders. Saying that they're the best team that God has given me, best leaders. I won't be able to find any leader like that. Anywhere else. And we try to, and when we say it, we believe it, and sometimes we have to say it to believe it.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, the more you confess it, the more you go like, I believe, even though of the things you hear and the things you see. But God has actually given all of us only His best, lah. And we also want to give our best back. So
Amen.
once again, Pastor Palan, Pastor Sam, it's always good chatting with you. Even I want to repeat, even if no one was listening tonight, it was still worth the time with you guys. But I know it's being recorded, and maybe the administrators of this Discord group can tell us later how we can get the recording, if at all. Otherwise, a very, very big thank you to all of you, including the team behind the scenes who have helped us tonight to make this possible. And of course, to everyone who have stayed more than an hour with us tonight. Pray that you have been blessed, encouraged, at least, if nothing else, encouraged to know that we are not alone, that we're going through all this together. Bad times, hard times, good times, and the future also is ours to claim. And I pray that we can do it together, even as Malaysians or people who have been entrusted to be in this nation for such a time as this. I'm looking forward, Pastor Palan and Pastor Sam, to fellowship with you in the future. Can't wait to get to Penang, or you
Yes.
to KL. So thank you again, and good night. I will pass this time to Pastor Andy, who will have some closing announcements. Thank you. God bless you.